Hi. My name is Eleanor Dane. I'm 64 years old. And a year ago, I buried a ghost. Not because my daughter died, but because she wanted me to think she had. And worse? She wanted the whole world to think I'd killed her. It began with a scream. Not mine, my neighbor's. Mrs. Wallace from across the street. She was holding a letter she found on my front porch. Torn envelope. Smudged handwriting. The ink had run from what looked like teardrops, or maybe water from a spray bottle. The note read, "Mom, this is your fault. Every time you said I wasn't enough, every time you compared me to people with real jobs, you killed me a little. Now you've finished the job. Don't look for me. I'm gone." And there was no signature. Just her initials, L.D., scribbled at the bottom like blood. She said I drove her to suicide. Wrote a note blaming me for everything. But a week later, I saw her Instagram story, drinking cocktails in Bali, alive and laughing. That's when I knew, this wasn't grief. This was war. Do you know what it feels like to find a suicide note with your name written like a curse? To stand on your own porch, the morning sun still rising, holding a letter that says you were the final reason your child chose to die? My hands were shaking. I remember the tremble so vividly that I can still feel the paper cutting my thumb as I unfolded it. The ink had bled from what looked like tears, but I knew my daughter well. Lila was a performer. A manipulator. If she cried, it was because someone was watching. And yet, in that moment, with those smudged words screaming at me in black and blue, I believed her. This is your fault, Mom. Every time you said I wasn't enough, you killed me a little. You finished the job. Don't look for me. I'm gone. There was no signature, just L.D. in the corner. Our mailbox was still full. Her room was empty. No calls. No texts. My chest felt like it had collapsed inward, a house caving in after years of ignored rot. I staggered back inside, clutching the note, the world around me spinning like a carousel of grief. When the police came, they did what they could. No evidence of foul play, they said. Possibly voluntary disappearance. But they took the note seriously. So did the town. My neighbors, the church ladies, even the woman who once sold me oranges at the farmer's market, they all turned cold. Like grief was contagious, or guilt. I'd already been labeled. The mother who pushed her daughter over the edge. The woman who was too harsh, too judgmental, too something. And maybe they weren't wrong. I raised Lila alone after her father left. I worked 2 jobs, kept the lights on, and made her do her homework. I didn't sugarcoat life. I didn't clap for mediocrity. But I loved her. I loved her like air. So for days, I cried. I didn't eat. I stared at the front door every hour, hoping she'd come back and tell me it was all just a terrible mistake. But instead, I saw a notification on my phone. A friend had tagged Lila in a post. I clicked out of reflex, expecting a tribute or maybe a memory. What I saw instead made my heart stop mid-beat. My daughter. Alive. Alive. Wearing a straw hat, sipping something tropical, half naked with some man in swim trunks, the caption screaming, #BaliBabes can't keep a bad girl down. I dropped the phone. My knees hit the floor next. She faked it. She faked her death. Blamed me. Let the world mourn her. Let me mourn her, and then danced on the lie like it was a beach party. And still, I didn't hate her. I just wanted her home. So what did I do? I sent her money. I sent apologies. I sent love wrapped in shame. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I loved her enough, I could undo the horror she caused. I didn't know then what I know now. She wasn't confused. She wasn't broken. She was calculating. And the moment she stepped back into my house, tanned and smug, I knew exactly what she came for. But this time, I wasn't the same mother she once fooled. I had already written the ending. And when I tell you what I did next, you'll either call me cruel, or you'll call me free. If this chapter shook you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. And tell me, have you ever been blamed for something so cruel it shattered your soul? Where are you watching from? I'm reading every single comment below. The first time I ever picked out flowers for a funeral, it was for someone who wasn't even dead. Gladiolus, her favorite. White lilies, too. The florist asked if it was for a young woman, and when I nodded, she offered her condolences and said, no mother should have to bury her daughter. I didn't have the heart to correct her. Not that day. Not when the town had already crucified me without a trial. Everyone had their stories. Lila said her mom never supported her art. I heard Eleanor locked her out one night during a snowstorm. She always looked so sad in church. None of them knew the real story. They didn't know about the DUI Lila got last year that I quietly paid off. Or the $15,000 she stole from my savings to invest in an NFT scam her boyfriend cooked up. Or how she once screamed that I was a jealous old woman when I told her the man she was dating had a wife and a baby. But I stayed silent. Let them mourn the version of Lila they wanted to believe in. Let them dress her in virtue while I wore the cloak of guilt. I even hosted the memorial. That's the part no one talks about, the insanity of organizing a funeral without proof of death. No body. No death certificate. Just a note and a town hungry for tragedy. People brought casseroles. One woman handed me a self-help book titled How to Forgive Yourself. I nearly choked. There were candles, teddy bears, her high school yearbook set on a table with scribbles like rest in peace, sunshine. One girl sobbed so hard I had to help her sit down. And I stood there, center stage, pretending to cry. Pretending I wasn't screaming inside. Pretending my daughter was a victim, not the author of a masterpiece in manipulation. But something changed that night. When the last guest left and I sat alone in the silence, I pulled out my laptop and watched her stories again, this time slowly, frame by frame. I saw her toes in the sand. Her laughter. Her fake tears when she toasted, to my freedom. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to report her. I was going to let her believe I was broken. That she'd won. I needed her to feel safe enough to come back. Because the worst mistake a liar can make is thinking they've silenced the one person who knows the truth. That night, I opened my late husband's locked drawer, the one I hadn't touched since he died 11 years ago. Inside was a folder of old legal contacts, including Meredith Sharp, his favorite probate attorney. She owed me a favor. I called her the next morning. And while the town was still mourning the girl with the angelic smile, I was already rewriting my will. Every cent, every asset, every property, transferred to the Ruth House, a shelter for abused women. Not that Lila had ever set foot there. No, she once said those women deserved their misery for being so weak. Ironic, isn't it? The very institution she mocked would soon inherit everything she thought she had won. And she'd never even see it coming. All I had to do was wait. Wait for the click of her heels on the porch. The smirk on her lips. The snake to slither home. And when she did, I'd already built the trap with love, money, and quiet rage. She didn't knock. She just walked in, like the prodigal daughter, except she wasn't limping or crying or apologizing. No. She had a Louis Vuitton carry-on in one hand and a ridiculous wide-brimmed hat in the other. Her skin was bronzed, her hair straightened and shining like she'd just stepped out of a luxury spa. And her eyes, they scanned the room like she was calculating how much she could pawn from each corner. "Hey, Mom," she said, cool as a cucumber. "Miss me? Miss her?" I had buried her in my mind 100 times over. Imagined her body in rivers, in alleyways, in anonymous graves, each scenario darker than the last. But seeing her standing in my living room alive and grinning? That was the cruelest version of all. I couldn't breathe. Not out of shock, but out of restraint. I had to keep every nerve in my face frozen, every word soaked in syrup. So I smiled back. "Layla," I said softly, walking over to her. "You're home." I hugged her. Not tightly. Just enough to make it seem real. She smelled like vanilla and tequila. "You wouldn't believe how hard it was to get a flight from Jakarta," she sighed, throwing her bag on the couch like it was hers. "But I just needed to come back. You know. Family." Family? The woman who blamed me in a forged suicide note was now talking about family? I offered her tea, watched her scan the cabinets like she'd been gone for a vacation, not a fake death. She prattled on about healing, about spiritual rebirth, about some snake oil guru she met in Ubud. I nodded. Listened. Memorized. She asked about the house, if I'd considered selling it, downsizing. Asked if the will was still as it used to be. I told her I hadn't touched it. That I'd been too grief-stricken. Her smile said everything I needed to know. She was planning a robbery. Not a violent one, but the slow, manipulative kind. The kind where the thief makes you hand over the key, thank them, and blame yourself for the empty vault. That night, I heard her whispering on the phone in her old bedroom. "She's soft now. She'll fold soon." She was wrong. I wasn't soft, I was silent. There's a difference. While she slept, I walked into the garage and looked at the stack of boxes labeled donations. They weren't really donations. They were trophies. Receipts. The documentation of everything I'd prepared while the world thought I was grieving. Copies of the real will. The photo of her partying in Bali with the timestamp. A framed copy of the suicide note she'd left on my porch, now fingerprinted and authenticated. All filed and ready for what was coming. And what was coming wasn't a second chance. It was a reckoning. You see, I hadn't just changed my will. I'd changed me. And when the devil thinks they've come home to feast, they don't expect the lamb to be holding the knife. The next morning, she made pancakes. From my own kitchen. In my apron. As if she were a daughter home from college instead of a ghost pretending not to be a liar. "I figured you hadn't been eating well," she said sweetly, flipping the batter while humming. "You've lost weight." I had. Grief will do that, fake grief, even more so. But I smiled and sat down at the table. I watched her move around like she was reclaiming territory. She didn't ask about the memorial. She didn't ask who showed up, or what it was like to bury someone without a body. No. Lila only cared about one thing, what I still had, and how fast she could get it. "You know," she began, sliding a plate in front of me, "I've been thinking. I'm not really ready to jump back into the workforce yet. I'm still processing everything. But maybe I could stay for a while. Help out around the house. Be here for you." I almost laughed. But I didn't. Because this was the performance of her life, and I was her captive audience. "Of course," I said gently. "Stay as long as you need." She beamed, and I tilted my head just slightly, studying her like a scientist examines a parasite. Every word she said was rehearsed. Every tear she almost shed, timed. And so I gave her what she wanted, trust. The illusion of it. I left my laptop unlocked. Let her glimpse emails from Meredith Legal Services with subject lines like "Final Will Confirmation." I left a yellow envelope sitting halfway out of my desk drawer, labeled to be filed with probate court. She noticed. Oh, she noticed. That night, I heard her sneaking into my study. Not footsteps, but drawers. Paper shuffling. A soft gasp. She believed it. She truly believed I had written everything back into her name. That I'd forgiven her. That I was grateful for her return. I even caught her humming the next day, some beachy tune from Bali, as she walked barefoot through the hallway like she already owned the place. And that's when I decided to up the game. Let's have a charity dinner, I suggested at breakfast. To honor your memory. Well, what everyone thought happened. We could use it as a chance to raise money for women in crisis. And maybe announce the new beneficiary of the estate. Her eyes sparkled like diamonds. She nearly dropped her fork. That's actually a great idea, she said slowly. Wow. Mom, that means a lot. She even hugged me. Tightly. I felt her breath on my neck and thought, you don't even know the ground beneath you is already cracking. The guest list included local reporters, church leaders, and the mayor's wife. Lila helped with the decor, picked white roses and champagne linens. Something elegant, she insisted, for a story of rebirth. But I wasn't writing a story of rebirth. I was crafting her funeral for real. Not with caskets, but with truth. Not with eulogies, but with proof. The night of the event was already set. And so was the slideshow. The projector. The press kits. The new will be signed, sealed, and ready for public viewing. What she didn't realize is that the woman she thought she broke had turned into a mirror. One that would finally show her the monster she truly was. The night of the charity gala arrived like a final act in a long, cruel play. The chandeliers glowed. The string quartet played something light and tragic. Our small-town country club had never seen so many cameras, not since the mayor's scandal 5 years ago. And Lila? She glided in like a queen returning to her court. Dressed in a backless navy gown, hair curled just enough to look effortless, and diamond earrings that hadn't belonged to her 3 months ago, but to me. Are you nervous? She whispered, squeezing my hand before we stepped on stage together. I can speak first, if you want. Frame the narrative. I nearly choked. Frame the narrative? That was her specialty. She'd already framed me as an abuser, a joy killer, a mother whose coldness had killed her daughter. But tonight, I would be the one holding the frame. And I'd show them the real picture. We stood together at the microphone. I introduced her, my daughter, Lila Dane, a survivor, a fighter, and a woman who has returned from the darkest place a soul can go. Applause thundered. Some women wept. The mayor's wife dabbed her eyes like we were the climax of a Hallmark movie. Lila took the mic and spun her story like gold. I was in a dark place, she began, voice trembling, hand to chest. But what brought me back was the thought of my mother. Her forgiveness. Her unconditional love. The audacity of her performance would have impressed Broadway. People stood. Cheered. Clinked glasses. And then. I stepped back to the mic before we raise our glasses. I said, I want to share a few moments that remind us just how far we've come. I gestured to the screen behind us. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed. The first slide, a high-resolution scan of the suicide note, complete with forensic timestamp. Gasps. The second slide, a photo of Lila in Bali, date-stamped just 4 days after the letter was found. She was holding a mojito and flashing a peace sign. Confused murmurs spread across the room. The third slide, screenshots of her Instagram and tagged locations, Bali, Ubud, Seminyak. Laughter. Dance. Drinks. Each image a nail in her coffin. This, I said, voice steady, is not the journey of a woman who fought her way back from death. This is the carefully orchestrated scam of a woman who made the world believe I had driven her to suicide. Who let an entire town mourn her. Who let her own mother host a funeral. Lila's face was frozen. Not in sorrow, but in calculation. I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She stepped forward, trying to grab the microphone, but I moved first. One more thing, I said. I have updated my will. And tonight, I'm officially announcing that everything, my home, my accounts, my art, my legacy, has been transferred to Ruth House, the shelter for real survivors. The kind who don't weaponize lies. Applause didn't come immediately. First, there was silence. A cold, stunned, stretching silence. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the mayor's wife. Then the room erupted, not in cheer, but in vindication. Layla ran. Heels clicking against marble, eyes wide like a cornered animal. And me? I sipped my wine. Slowly. Calmly. Watching her realize that the spotlight she had so carefully claimed had just turned into a floodlight exposing every inch of her cruelty. 3 days after the gala, a courier handed me a thick envelope at my front gate. Lila's name in the corner. Inside? A formal letter from her attorney accusing me of defamation, emotional abuse, and publicly orchestrating character assassination. There it was, her new game. The moment the public turned on her, she swapped the mask of victim for the mask of survivor turned avenger. The woman who faked her own death was now trying to sue the mother who exposed the truth. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so poisonous. I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea and read the letter 3 times. It reeked of desperation. Of someone who had lost control and was now grasping at the final lever left, the legal system. But here's what Lila didn't know: I'd been preparing for this since the day I saw her cocktail photo in Bali. I didn't just expose her publicly. I'd also filed every document, every piece of evidence, every conversation with my lawyer, Meredith Sharp, in airtight legal order. I called Meredith that evening. Let her file it, I said calmly. I want this in court. I want the record public. I want a transcript of every lie. And that's exactly what happened. Layla filed. Her lawyers argued I'd humiliated her, that I'd baited her into returning under false pretenses, that I had coerced a confession through digital manipulation, as if the Instagram posts weren't real. The court date was set. The town whispered. Local news ran a headline: Mother-daughter showdown. Was the suicide a hoax or a cry for help? I didn't give interviews. I didn't need to. Because when the day came, I didn't walk into that courtroom alone. I brought witnesses. The neighbor who found the note. The florist who sold me funeral arrangements. The priest who led her memorial. And best of all? The tech investigator who verified the Instagram metadata and timeline. They laid it all out minute by minute, post by post, transaction by transaction. Every cocktail she drank. Every smile she faked. Every dollar I wired her while grieving. Lila's lawyer tried to pivot. Tried to cry. Tried to paint her as misunderstood. But the judge? He was old school. He'd buried a daughter once. You could see it in his eyes. He wasn't going to let a fraud masquerade as a tragedy. And when he ruled in my favor? When he threw out her case and ordered her to pay my legal fees? She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just sat there, staring at the floor, as if for the first time in her life, the curtain had fallen, and no one was clapping. I didn't look at her as I left. I didn't need to. Because justice wasn't in seeing her crumble. It was in knowing the truth was no longer mine alone. It now lived on the record, carved into court documents and public memory. Her lies couldn't breathe anymore. Not in this town. Not in any town. The girl who once said, "You killed me, Mom," was now being remembered not as a martyr, but as the woman who faked her own death and sued her own mother, and lost. The news spread faster than I expected. The courtroom wasn't packed, but the fallout echoed far and wide. A local blogger live-tweeted the verdict. A regional station replayed the clip of me saying, "I buried her with love. She resurrected for greed." But the real carnage didn't happen in court. It happened online. It started with her old college friends, women who'd once cried at her memorial, posted photo tributes, who wore her name on bracelets and shared her story as a cautionary tale about mental health. The moment they saw the ruling? They deleted every post. Some unfollowed her. Some commented publicly. How could you lie like that? I defended you. I sobbed for you. I raised money in your name. But it got worse. One girl, Marcy Templeton, uploaded a video saying she had lent Lila $3,000 right after her comeback from Bali, thinking it was to help with therapy. It wasn't. She showed a screenshot of a Venmo payment to @BaliQueenLila with a wine glass emoji in the memo. It went viral. By the end of the week, 4 more people had come forward. A former roommate said Lila used her fake death story to get a modeling gig. A cousin admitted she begged her for emotional support cash via GoFundMe. The comments turned brutal. You scammed your mother. You scammed us all. You deserve jail time. You're what's wrong with this generation. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. It was revelation. She hadn't just lost the case, she lost her ability to control the story. The power was slipping through her manicured fingers like sand. I heard from the shelter, Ruth House, the very place that now owned her would-be inheritance. They'd gotten over 700 donations in a single weekend. Some with notes like, "For the real survivors, not the ones who cry wolf." Lila's face, once the image of public sympathy, had become a meme. One showed her sipping a cocktail with the caption, "R.I.P. me, catch me in Bali." I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting a little. She was still my daughter. And part of me, the ancient mother part, ached for the child she used to be. But the rest of me? The woman she tried to destroy? She was just getting stronger. I didn't expect what happened next, though. A knock on the door. No media vans. No neighbors. Just her. Standing on my porch. Hair pulled back. No makeup. No performance. Just a hollow girl with tired eyes and trembling hands. "Mom," she whispered. "Can we talk?" She looked like someone who had finally heard the silence she created. The echo of a lie too big to carry. I let her in. Not out of pity. But because I was ready for the next move, and she had no idea I was still 3 steps ahead. She sat on the very same couch where she once threw tantrums about curfews and school dances. But this time, there were no tears, at least not the real kind. Just mascara-free eyes, a trembling bottom lip, and that same breathy voice she used when she wanted to appear broken. "I messed up," she whispered. I got lost in everything. The lies, the attention. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I stared at her. Not with hatred. Not even pain. I'd burned through those emotions weeks ago. What I felt now was surgical. Measured. Clinical. "Why are you really here, Lila?" I asked. Her gaze dropped. She picked at a hangnail. "I have nothing left," she said. "No friends. No money. No apartment. I can't get hired anywhere, Google me and all that comes up is the trial. I can't even get a bartending job." She paused for dramatic effect. "I need help, Mom." There it was. The truth hiding beneath a tattered shawl of guilt. She didn't come to apologize. She came to collect. She wanted me to reach out. Offer a spare room. A bank transfer. Maybe even a second chance. "You know," I said softly, "for months after you disappeared, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, what if I really had pushed you too far? What if all those years of being the tough mom finally broke you?" Her eyes welled with fake tears. "Mom, don't you know," I cut in. "Let me finish. I blamed myself for everything. Until I saw you in Bali. Until I watched you sipping cocktails while people lit candles for you here." Her lips parted. But no words came out. "Do you know what it's like," I continued, to get hugged by strangers at church and be told we're praying for you while you're wiring money to a daughter who's pretending to be dead? The silence was a blanket over both of us. Thick. Smothering. She sniffled, and for once, I think a tear did fall, maybe not out of guilt, but from the shame of being seen. Truly, finally seen. So, will you help me? She whispered. Just until I get back on my feet. I smiled. Of course, I said gently. I have something for you. Her eyes lit up, like a starving woman smelling bread. I walked to the drawer, pulled out a folder, and handed it to her. Inside? A fake check. $50,000. In bold letters, pay to the order of Lila Dane. She gasped. Mom, it's not real, I said flatly. But it feels nice, doesn't it? To hold something that looks like redemption. That's what I've felt every time you lied to my face and expected me to just forget. She dropped the folder like it was on fire. Why are you doing this? Because you came here thinking I was still the same mother who buried you with tears, I said. But you forgot, I've already held your funeral. This is just the memorial for your conscience. She stood, flushed with fury. You're cold. No, I said, rising too. I'm awake. She stormed out. And I didn't stop her. Because I knew where she'd go next. I'd already tracked the last of her accounts. The one desperate move she hadn't played yet. The one that would finally bury her lies, for good. 2 days after she stormed out of my house, I got an alert on one of the keyword trackers I'd set up months ago. Lila Dane launches GoFundMe, rebuilding after abuse. My breath didn't hitch. My hands didn't shake. I just smiled. There it was. The final mask. One last desperate grab for public sympathy, playing the role of the emotionally battered daughter of a narcissistic, controlling mother. She didn't name me, of course, not directly. But the phrases she used? Psychological scars, emotional manipulation, family coercion, they were all seeds planted carefully to suggest the villain of her life was me. Again. The photo she chose showed her looking weak, pale, hollow-eyed. Not the woman who'd sipped cocktails in Bali, but someone who could pass for a domestic violence victim. She even posted a tearful video, probably recorded right after leaving my house, where she said, I went back hoping to heal. But the past is still there. The trauma is still alive. I need to start fresh. Anywhere but here. The donation link was right beneath her tears. Her goal, $100,000. By the next morning, she had already raked in 12 grand. I didn't panic. Because I'd already prepared for this possibility. I had screen recordings of her visit to my home. Audio logs. Her fake apology. The confrontation. Even the moment she took the fake check and thanked me. I also had a little ally in my back pocket, a local journalist named Parker Vane. He'd been covering the fallout of the trial. He had smelled the rot in her story from the beginning. I messaged him and sent everything. You want an exclusive? I asked. She just gave us her finale. Within 24 hours, Parker published an exposé, Lila Dane's GoFundMe, a new scam from the woman who faked her own death. It included screenshots of her private Bali posts, the fake suicide note, the courtroom ruling, and yes, even clips from our recorded conversation, pixelated enough to protect my privacy, but clear enough to hear her say, I need help, Mom. Just until I get back on my feet. The article spread like wildfire. People who had donated demanded refunds. Some even reported her campaign for fraud. Within 48 hours, GoFundMe froze the account. The comments turned toxic, no, truthful. You disgust me. My brother took his life last year. And you made it a costume. I believed you. I cried for you. You deserve to be penniless. The next day, I received one last email from her. Just one line, you've ruined me. I didn't reply. Because I hadn't ruined her. I'd just stopped pretending she hadn't ruined herself. And when I passed the newspaper stand and saw her face next to the word scammer, I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel cold. I felt peace. For nearly a year, my name had been whispered like a curse. That's Eleanor Dane, the mother who drove her daughter to suicide. I'd become the woman no one invited to luncheons, the woman who sat alone at book club, the woman people pitied from a distance and feared up close. I had been erased by the weight of someone else's lie. But now, they were remembering me. Not as a villain. Not even as a victim. But as me. It started at the grocery store. Mrs. Hawthorne, who hadn't made eye contact with me since the memorial, touched my arm in the produce aisle and said, "I read the article. I'm so sorry for everything you've been through." Then at church, Father Malloy paused mid-sermon to mention those among us who have endured false judgment and found the strength to rise above it. Eyes turned to me, not with suspicion this time, but with respect. And when I went to Ruth House to deliver my official estate papers, the final transfer of funds, the deed to my lakeside property, and the keys to the home Lila once thought she'd inherit, they held a small ceremony in my honor. They called it the resurrection gift. A woman named Kendra, who escaped a husband that nearly strangled her to death, grabbed my hand and said, "Your daughter mocked us once. But now you're the reason we're expanding. You turned her lie into our lifeline." That night, for the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and saw not grief, but steel. I wasn't the woman Lila broke. I was the woman who rebuilt herself out of the ashes her daughter tried to bury her in. But the world hadn't just moved on from Lila, they'd erased her. Her name became digital clutter. Job rejections. Deleted accounts. A warning on message boards. Even her old college removed her from the alumni spotlight list. And me? I was invited to speak at a university panel about truth in the age of digital manipulation. My talk was titled, "The Day My Daughter Faked Her Death, and What It Taught Me About Being Believed." The auditorium was packed. People cried. Not for Lila. For every mother who had been told she was the problem. For every parent blamed, shamed, and silenced. When I finished, I got a standing ovation. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just survived my daughter's betrayal. I had buried it. Publicly. Permanently. And somewhere, alone, exposed, jobless, invisible, Lila was watching. Watching me become everything she tried to destroy. Not out of spite. Not for applause. But because I remembered something she forgot: you can fake a death. But you can't fake justice. It was almost poetic, the way she tried to crawl back into the spotlight, like a moth obsessed with the flame that already burned her wings. One morning, a clip from a podcast began circulating on social media. The show was called Unfiltered Victims, and there she was, Lila Dane, leaning into a microphone in a dimly lit studio, eyes wide with fake vulnerability, voice trembling like a singer trying to hit a note she couldn't hold. "Everyone thinks they know my story," she began. But they weren't there in that house. They didn't see how cold it was. How conditional her love was. I was never enough unless I was obedient, perfect, silent. I leaned back in my chair, coffee going cold in my hands, watching her spin new lies from the same rotten thread. She didn't mention the suicide note directly this time. She'd learned her lesson. No more fake deaths. Just vague accusations. Emotional coercion. "I didn't fake anything," she said. "I escaped." And my mother turned my escape into a public execution. That line? It echoed. Went viral. The podcast tried to paint her as a phoenix, a misunderstood daughter reclaiming her narrative. But what they didn't expect, what she didn't expect, was how quickly the internet turned. Because in the age of digital memory, receipts live forever. The comment section exploded. "Girl, didn't you literally get exposed in court? You escaped to Bali with cocktail selfies and stole money from a GoFundMe. Sit down. She said, public execution, like her mom didn't just show evidence. Screenshots flooded in. Of the original article. The trial summary. The fake check clip. Even the Bali photo of her dancing with a shirtless bartender made a comeback. Someone made a compilation of all her lies, set it to circus music, and posted it with the caption, Lila Dane's greatest hits, of gaslighting. The podcast hosts went silent for 2 days, then issued a public statement, we were misled. We apologize to our audience and retract the episode. Lila tried to defend herself on Instagram, posting a black screen with the words, my story is still valid. But it was too late. Because the thing about stories? Once yours is proven false, you don't get to be the narrator anymore. And me? I didn't have to say a word. The world did it for me. I had taken the high road. Told the truth. And let her bury herself with her own shovel. I didn't rejoice. I didn't gloat. I simply closed my laptop, walked into the garden, and spent the rest of the afternoon pruning the lavender bushes she used to trample on her way out the back door. Because in the end, I didn't just get my name back. I got my peace. And Lila? She still had her microphone. But now, no one was listening. It came at 2:14 a.m., the hour when grief, regret, and madness all take turns pretending to be love. A single message on my phone, from an unknown number, but I knew the rhythm of her tone too well to be fooled. You got what you wanted. They all hate me. I have nothing. But if I go down, Mom, I'm not going alone. I read it 3 times. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't tremble. I simply stared at those words, not with fear, but with a kind of exhausted curiosity, like watching a candle gutter its last breath. She wasn't asking for mercy anymore. She was trying to scare me. It was her last card. The threat. The whisper of secrets only she knew, as if she held something sharp enough to cut me on the way out. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my old security app and double-checked the backup vault in the cloud. Full audio of her visit, video footage from the nanny cam in the hallway, emails with her fake suicide note, metadata, screenshots of her GoFundMe withdrawals, the transcript from court, even her private DM to an old friend where she joked, "They all think I'm dead, lol." Imagine. Every digital footprint, preserved. Not just for protection, but for legacy. Not mine. Hers. At dawn, I made tea. I lit a single candle on the windowsill and watched the sky turn from bruised purple to gold. Then I called Meredith, my lawyer. She's not done, I said. She's circling. Meredith sighed. Want me to file a restraining order? I thought about it. No, I said finally. I want to let her write her own ending. She doesn't need me to push anymore. Just watch. And I did watch. For the next few days, her social media flared up with cryptic posts. Don't trust everything your parents tell you. You think you know someone, I still have screenshots. But no one cared. The world had moved on. Her name had become a cautionary tale, not a headline. People didn't argue with her anymore. They just scrolled past. Until one night, 4 days after that text, I got an email from a lawyer I didn't recognize. He represented a small podcast startup in Portland. I'm reaching out on behalf of my client, Lila Dane. She would like to settle this matter privately, without further damage to either party. She is willing to sign a full admission of wrongdoing in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement and a small financial settlement. A settlement. After she faked her death. Stole from the world. Sued me. Lied again. Threatened me. Now she wanted hush money. I replied with one line, tell your client the damage isn't mine to clean up. She broke the mirrors, now she has to live with the shards. I never heard from that lawyer again. And Lila? She stopped posting. Stopped threatening. Because the silence that once haunted me now haunted her. It was almost eerie, the way the noise just stopped. One week she was posting passive-aggressive stories, tagging old friends, stirring dust in a world that had already swept her away. And then, nothing. No posts. No updates. No cryptic queen captions or threats laced in trauma lingo. Just silence. And unlike last time, when the absence of sound pulled grief out of me like a scream, this time it felt like exhale. But others noticed. A former classmate messaged me, someone who'd once posted crying selfies during Lila's fake memorial. Hey, weird question, but is Lila okay? She hasn't been online in like 10 days. I responded calmly, last I heard, she was trying to sell redemption. Maybe she ran out of buyers. Then came the inevitable twist, a wellness check. Someone, probably a gullible ex or leftover sympathizer, reported her missing. Police called me. Ms. Dane, your daughter's landlord hasn't seen her in over 2 weeks. We were told you're her closest family. I blinked. Define close. They asked permission to enter her unit, just in case. I gave it. She wasn't there. But she wasn't gone either. The place was empty, laptop left open, dishes in the sink, half-packed suitcase on the bed. No sign of foul play, no blood, no note. But this time, no one assumed she was dead. Not even the officers. She has a reputation, doesn't she? One of them muttered. Wouldn't be surprised if she staged this too. I said nothing. Just stared at the half-eaten granola bar on the kitchen counter like it might confess something. But here's what chilled me, on her desk was a list, scribbled on hotel stationery. Places where they still don't know me. Bangkok, Lisbon, Cape Town, Buenos Aires, Toronto. It wasn't a suicide note. It was an escape plan. Again. But this time, it wasn't wrapped in theater. She hadn't texted goodbye. She hadn't crafted a blame-laced final act. She was just vanishing. And no one cared. No vigil. No candlelight gathering. No GoFundMe. Even the police gave up within the week. She's legally an adult. And considering her history, this isn't unusual. It hit me then, my daughter had succeeded at what she always wanted. She'd disappeared. Not from Earth. But from relevance. The world no longer believed her. And a liar with no audience? That's just a ghost waiting to be forgotten. But I remembered. I remembered the child with dandelion hair and scraped knees. The one who begged me to stay in her room during thunderstorms. The one who said I love you before middle school made it uncool. That version of her still lived somewhere in my memory. Untouched by the venom of what came after. But the version who wrote that suicide note, who drained me dry, who sued and threatened and begged and scammed. She was gone. Maybe across an ocean. Maybe in a different name. But gone, nonetheless. And for the first time. I didn't chase her. I just let her fade. I almost didn't open it. The box was small, dusty, shoved in the back of her bedroom closet beneath a pile of old scarves and expired beauty products. It was the only thing she hadn't taken or tossed in her hurried exit. For a week, I ignored it. Every time I opened her door to dust or air out the room, I'd glance at it from the corner of my eye. It felt like bait. Like one more manipulation left behind, daring me to care. But on a rainy Tuesday, when the wind howled through the trees and silence pressed too hard on the walls, I brought it downstairs and placed it on the kitchen table. The lid came off with a soft sigh of cardboard. Inside, there was no cash. No confession. No photos from Bali. Just a stack of folded notebook pages, a plastic baby bracelet with the name Lila in faded pink beads, and one Polaroid photo of the two of us, me holding her on a beach when she was maybe 2, her face red from crying, mine trying hard to smile. And then, the letters. Dozens. All dated over a span of 6 years. Most were unfinished. Scrawled in rage. One read, "Dear Mom, I hate you. I hate how perfect you pretend to be. You don't even know what it's like to be your daughter." Another said, "I lied to you about the internship. I never got it. I never even applied. I didn't want to tell you I failed again." There were drafts of apologies. "I'm sorry I took the money. I was desperate. I thought if I showed you I could live big, you'd finally be proud." And then came one, written in neater handwriting, clearly more recent. It was folded twice. No envelope. Just a soft crease like it had been opened and read over and over again. "Dear Mom, I don't know who I am anymore. I started pretending a long time ago, and now I don't know where the lie ends and I begin. You were never cruel. You were just unbreakable. And I hated you for it. I wanted to be loved for being messy. You loved me by trying to fix me. That's what broke us. If I disappear again, don't come looking. I don't deserve to be found. Love, L." I sat there in the kitchen, that letter shaking in my hands like it was alive. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too stunned by the brutal honesty, by the child I hadn't spoken to in decades finally whispering something real. The bracelet slid out of the box and onto the table. Plastic. Innocent. Pink. That night, I lit a candle by the window again. Not for mourning. Not for anger. But for her, somewhere, drifting between names and cities, carrying the weight of herself. She hadn't asked for forgiveness. She hadn't earned it either. But I gave her something else. A small prayer into the night, "May the next version of you be gentler, even if I never meet her." And I folded the letter. Tucked it back in the box. Sealed it. Labeled it, "What might have been." It wasn't a grand event, no red carpets or media flashing bulbs. Just folding chairs beneath string lights in the garden behind Ruth House, the shelter my daughter once mocked and that I ultimately gave everything to. There were women there I had never met, some young and frightened, some older and fierce with survival. They weren't broken. They were weathered. And still standing. Just like me. I had been invited as a guest of honor, though I hadn't done it for honor. I gave them the house because it needed love. I gave them the money because it needed meaning. I gave them the inheritance because my daughter didn't understand the difference between having something and earning it. The director stood at a small podium, her voice steady but thick with gratitude. "Tonight," she said, "we dedicate the new wing of Ruth House in honor of the woman who turned personal betrayal into communal healing. The Eleanor Dane Center for Renewal." My breath caught. I didn't expect that. I'd given expecting nothing. But here they were, giving my name back in gold letters etched into stone. They asked me to say a few words. I stood slowly, holding the small piece of paper I'd scribbled notes on that morning. "I once lost my name," I began. Not to death, but to a lie that wore my daughter's face. For months, I was the villain in a story I didn't write. Until I realized something important: we don't get to control who breaks us, but we do get to choose who we rebuild for. There were soft nods. Quiet tears. A hush that felt like reverence. I gave this house what I couldn't give my daughter: structure, support, protection. But I hope, someday, wherever she is, that she finds those things too. Even if it isn't from me. Silence followed. The heavy, powerful kind. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. Early 20s. Shy eyes. "Ms. Dane," she said softly, "I was going to give up. I thought my story was too messy to fix. But after hearing yours, I think maybe I'm allowed to survive it." I hugged her. Tightly. As if I were hugging the version of Lila I used to know. The one before the lies. The one who used to sneak into my bed at night after a nightmare. Before I left that night, the director handed me an envelope. "We received this anonymously," she said. "No return address. But, we thought you should have it." Inside was a money order for $1,500 and a note, for the place that deserved the inheritance. I'm still trying. It wasn't much. But it was real. And real, for Lila, was rare. I stared at the paper, not with hope, but with something adjacent. Maybe this wasn't her redemption. But maybe it was the beginning of her remembering how to be human. And maybe that was enough. For now. It came as a message request in my email, one of those you almost delete out of habit. The subject line read, "I knew Lila in Bali." She wasn't who she said she was. The name was unfamiliar. A woman named Maren Lint. Swedish, from the signature. She said she had met Lila at a yoga retreat in Ubud during the time my daughter had disappeared. Her message was cautious, almost nervous, like she wasn't sure I'd even read it, let alone believe her. "I thought about reaching out earlier," she wrote. "But I didn't want to cause more pain. After the podcast debacle, I realized you deserved to know what I saw. And what Lila told me." I clicked open the Zoom link she provided. Just her face of blonde, mid-30s, intelligent eyes with a sadness behind them. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. "I know it's strange. But I think it's important." She explained that Lila had introduced herself as Elle. Said she was an orphan. Said she'd inherited a fortune after escaping an abusive adoptive family in Vermont. The group believed her. She told stories of near suicide, spiritual awakening, toxic motherhood. She was magnetic, Maren said. And troubled. She drank too much. Slept little. But we believed her. Then one night, late after a fire circle and too much wine, Lila confessed the truth. Not all of it. But enough to paint a new picture. She said she wrote a suicide note she didn't mean, Maren said. That she tested her mother to see if she was loved unconditionally. That the Bali trip was supposed to be a break, but when she saw the funeral happening online, she panicked and leaned into it. She laughed, Maren said, frowning. Said it was like watching a movie. She felt like a ghost, untouchable. But also, guilty. And then came the part that sent chills through my spine. She told me, Maren whispered, that she sometimes dreams about you. Not the lies. Not the trial. Just, standing in the kitchen while you stir tea. She said in the dream, you never speak. You just look at her. And she always wakes up crying. I didn't respond for a moment. The image was too vivid. Too eerily close to the truth. I think, Maren added, she misses you more than she's capable of admitting. But she doesn't know how to undo the damage. So she runs. I thanked her. Genuinely. She offered to forward me some old texts, pictures of Lila during those Bali months, photos not meant for Instagram. Unfiltered. Tired. Real. When the call ended, I sat alone at the window again. The same window I'd lit candles in. The same one I stared through the night I buried her in my heart. It wasn't closure. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something I never thought I'd get from the woman who wore lies like skin, the truth, secondhand. And it made me wonder, what if, all this time, she wasn't just punishing me? What if she was punishing herself, too? A week after the call with Maren, I found a thin envelope slipped under my door. No stamp. No return address. Just a faded postcard of a Bali beach, white sand, turquoise waves, a lone palm tree bending with the breeze. I turned it over with trembling hands. Written in neat, familiar handwriting were 3 simple words, I'm still sorry. No signature. No explanation. No apology beyond those words. But somehow, they carried the weight of years, the burden of lies, loss, and broken love. I stood frozen, the postcard crumpling slightly in my grip. The ghosts of our past suddenly felt less like enemies and more like a conversation waiting to happen. I wanted to respond. I wanted to reach out and say, I forgive you. But more than that, I wanted to ask the question that had haunted me since that first note: why? Why the lies? Why the cruelty? Why the need to disappear into a story so dark it almost became real? I set the postcard on my desk and sat in the quiet, letting the answer come on its own time. Some wounds take a lifetime to heal. Some truths come too late. And sometimes, the hardest part of love is letting go of the person you thought you knew. After years of being whispered about, judged, and pushed to the sidelines, something shifted. It started small: a nod from Mrs. Hawthorne in the grocery aisle, a smile from the book club ladies, a thank you card from the church. Slowly, the walls I thought were closing in began to crumble. But more importantly, I found a new family in the women at Ruth House. They weren't just survivors, they were warriors who had faced their own storms and come out fierce and unbroken. Together, we turned pain into power. I became an advocate, sharing my story to raise awareness about the damage lies can do and the strength it takes to heal. At community centers, schools, even small gatherings at the local library, I spoke openly about betrayal, forgiveness, and reclaiming your life when everything seems lost. The woman who was once shunned became a beacon of hope, not because I forgot the past, but because I owned it and chose to rise above it. And sometimes, when the evening is quiet and the stars are bright, I still hold that postcard from Bali, the 3 simple words reminding me that even in the darkest stories, there can be a spark of light. Because sometimes, peace isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing what to carry forward and what to finally leave behind. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: betrayal can break you, but it doesn't have to define you. When my daughter faked her death, blamed me for it, and tore my world apart, I felt shattered beyond repair. The community I once loved turned away. Friends vanished. My own heart felt like it was bleeding silently every day. But somewhere inside, beneath the pain and the shame, there was a flicker, a stubborn ember of strength I didn't know I had. I learned that strength doesn't mean never falling. It means standing up again after every fall. It means looking the darkest moments in the eye and refusing to let them steal your soul. It means owning your truth even when the whole world doubts it. I learned the importance of patience. I didn't take my daughter to court out of anger, I did it out of quiet determination. I didn't scream or shout, I waited, collected evidence, and planned my steps carefully. Because revenge without justice is hollow, and justice without truth is blind. I learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing cruelty or forgetting the past. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of bitterness. I never fully forgave my daughter, not yet, maybe not ever, but I found peace in letting go of the need to carry that weight forever. Forgiveness, for me, was a gift I gave myself, not her. I learned that healing comes in many forms. For me, it was rebuilding my reputation, standing in front of others and sharing my pain openly, and dedicating my life to helping other women who suffered in silence. Turning my daughter's lies into a legacy of hope for survivors was the most powerful way I could reclaim my life. And finally, I learned that sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. That truth is painful, but it's real, and accepting it is the first step to moving forward. So if you're watching this and you've been betrayed by a child, a spouse, a friend, know this: your pain is valid. Your story matters. You are not alone. And while it might feel impossible now, you can rise from the ashes of hurt and find a new beginning. Don't let anyone make you doubt your worth. Don't let silence or shame keep you trapped. Seek help. Speak your truth. And above all, protect your heart, because your strength will be your greatest revenge. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please like, share, and subscribe my channel. And tell me, what's the hardest truth you've ever faced? Where are you watching from? I read every comment and hold each story close. Tomorrow, Chapter 20 will close this journey with a reflection on power, hope, and the unexpected turns of life. Say yes when you're ready. As I sit here reflecting on this journey, the chaos, the heartbreak, the battles fought and won, I realize something profound. Power isn't about control or revenge. It's about reclaiming yourself. When my daughter faked her death and blamed me, she tried to erase not just her presence but my identity. She thought she could silence me by turning the world against me. But what she didn't understand was that true power comes from within, from the resilience to stand tall when everything else falls away. The power I found was quiet at first. It wasn't in the courtroom drama or the public exposure. It was in the small, everyday moments, waking up each day and choosing hope over despair, choosing kindness over bitterness, choosing to build rather than break. It was in the decision to dedicate my inheritance to women who had suffered real pain, turning a personal betrayal into a beacon of healing for others. Hope, I learned, is not naive. It's a fierce, stubborn light that refuses to go out even when the darkness feels endless. It's hope that kept me going when neighbors whispered, when old friends turned away, and when the pain of losing my daughter to lies felt unbearable. Hope is what connected me to the new family I found in the shelter and in every woman who shared her story with me. Life, I've come to see, is unpredictable. It twists and turns in ways you never imagine. The person you think you know best might become a stranger. The home you built might feel like a prison. The love you gave might be used against you. But life also gives second chances, in unexpected forms and moments, and it is up to us to recognize them and embrace the future, not the past. To anyone watching this, especially those who feel broken by betrayal, abuse, or loss, know this: you have the strength to survive, and more importantly, to thrive. Your story is not over. There is power in your truth and hope in your heart. You are not defined by the darkness that touched you but by the light you choose to follow. Thank you for walking this path with me. Your support means everything. Please like, share, and subscribe my channel if my story resonated with you. And tell me in the comments, what gives you hope when life feels unbearable? Where are you watching from? I read every word and hold every story close. This is Eleanor Dane, signing off, but remember, your power lies within. Never let anyone take that from you.